Welcome back, guys, to the saddest and most bittersweet Thomas adaptations. Today we're talking about the stories of Sodor episode Musician. I originally was going to review Diagnosis, but then I realized that those that aren't exactly following along with the episodes for Victor Tanzig's series might find it a bit confusing, so I picked one that was more so for everybody. Meaning that any viewer wouldn't get confused with it if they just saw this episode, versus Diagnosis, which you would need to watch seasons 1 through 4 to understand all the smaller details and some lines of dialogue going on. Of course, it's all written, directed, and narrated by Victor Tanzig, so let's begin with the review.
Ask any navvy what the hardest part of building a railway is, and they'll likely say the grading. This is when the land is altered to accommodate the needs of a proposed line, whether it has to be flattened, raised, lowered, and so forth. This is a time-consuming process and can be very difficult depending on the terrain. So the workers on the Arlesdale Railway were positively giddy when they learned they didn't have to worry about any of that. Thanks to the preceding Mid-Sodor Railway, the region had already been modified accordingly. Aside from repairing some bridges and removing a few trees, most of the work consisted of just replacing the track, which was pretty straightforward. This was how they were able to reach Arlesdale so quickly. While this was going on, the ballast mine was being constructed. After the line reached the site, they spent the next few months installing the necessary infrastructure, and on April 1st, 1968, the railway and the mine were open for business. Bust my buffers! You gentlemen work fast. We had a similar setup on our old railway, so this is nothing new. But this is fizzling fireboxes. I can't believe we're still running passenger trains. Don't worry, Mike. I spoke to Mr. Mannering and he's going to take you off passenger duty soon. Really? How soon? Next April Fools! Oh, all right, you got me. Well done. Now that's it. You know the deal. What deal? Back on our old railway, we had an arrangement when it came to April Fools. We would only play a single prank on each other, and I think it's time to change that. Like you said, Bert, this is a fresh start. Don't you dare! One is already too much. Yes, as much as I enjoy having a laugh, I think it would be best if we stuck with the current system. Fine, then so will I. For now. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Rex, what are you planning? Nothing, I swear.
Our story takes place on the Arlesdale small engines, where it's April Fool's Day and Rex is catching everybody off guard. He leaves the sheds for his afternoon excursion train when he encounters a woman beside the tracks.
Are you planning something? No, but it'll be so much fun making them think I am. You can be real devious sometimes. Only sometimes. I'll have to work on that. Oh, hello. Good afternoon, madam. This isn't a pedestrian bridge. For your own safety, I must insist that you leave. Yeah, sure. Sorry. I just want a better view of the river. My husband's a fisherman. I was hoping I'd be able to see his boat from here. Have you spotted it by any chance? It's called the Silver Krill. Can't say I have. Oh dear. He should have been back by now. I'm sorry about that. I'll keep my eyes open and let you know if I see anything. Thank you. I'll be on my way then. Goodbye.
Rex leaves the woman, and as he puffs down the line, he and his driver pass a rundown-looking cottage, where the most somber piano piece starts to play. The engines discuss the strange encounter that Rex had, but know of no boat called the Silver Krill. Bert also hears the sad music the next day and comes across Aiden, a workman in the yard who knows of the woman. Bert then encounters her too.
Morning, Bert. Oh, hello, Aiden. How are you? Better than you, it seems. Why the long face? I just heard this rather sad music coming from the Fletcher house. Is that it? The one opposite the school? That's it, all right. It's the home of my old music teacher, Mrs. Fletcher. Why would she live in such shabby conditions? It's her choice. Just about everyone's offered to help fix up the place, but she prefers to keep it as is. She wants her husband to have something to do when he gets back. Is her husband a fisherman aboard the Silver Krill? Ah, so you finally met her. Not me. Rex has. He found her standing on the bridge looking down over the river. Waiting for her husband as usual. Even after all these years, it still breaks my heart. What do you mean by all these years? Damn it! Sorry, Bert, I have to take care of this. I'll tell you the whole story later. Mrs. Fletcher? Yes? Don't worry, I'll stay off the bridge. I'm sorry if I got in the way of your mate. No, that's quite all right. Rex told us about your husband. I wanted to ask if he's returned yet. No, he hasn't. I hope he gets back soon. There are some loose floorboards in the kitchen that need fixing, among other things. If you like, ma'am, I could ask some of our workers if they'd be willing to lend a hand. I'm sure they already have. They're mostly locals, aren't they? I even taught a few of them the piano when they were young. Was one of your students named Aiden? Aiden O'Hara, yes. All thumbs, but he tried his best. I see. Well, thank you for your time, ma'am. I'll be on my way now. And I should move closer to the riverbank. I want to make sure my husband can see me properly.
Later that day, the three engines once again discuss Mrs. Fletcher's ordeal. Mike is surprisingly negative about it.
A couple of chords short of a symphony. Why? What did he say? We mentioned the Silver Krill when he was here earlier. Turns out he knew about it. She disappeared back in 1941 alongside her captain, Horace Fletcher. They launched a massive search but didn't find a wreck or a survivor. He was declared lost at sea. Fizzling fireboxes. That's awful. So she's standing vigil for a man who will never return? That is heartbreaking. More like pitiful. How can someone be so daft as to waste their life like that? Shut your gob, Mike. Grief affects everyone differently.
Even when he encounters her, he's negative.
Mrs. Fletcher, I take it. That's right. Nice to meet you. Mike, is it? Yes, ma'am. And I want to offer my condolences over the loss of your husband. So you believe he's gone too? Don't you, ma'am? If I did, I wouldn't be waiting for him. With all due respect, ma'am, that's a mistake. Why? Because he vanished, 27 years ago? Have you ever heard of someone coming back after being gone that long? No, but that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Maybe not, but it is highly unlikely. You're not doing yourself any favors by wasting away here. Is that what your husband would have wanted? When he comes back, I'll ask him. I appreciate your concern, Mike, but you don't need to worry. I have all the time in the world.
Later that night, the engines all discuss Mrs. Fletcher until Aiden comes and drops a pretty large piece of information that the three engines should have known.
Rex, get the gangplank. I was thinking more the cat o' nine tails. I'm sorry, I lost my temper. The sheer delusion, it reminded me of Matilda. Yes, watching her crumble was bad enough. I don't ever want to see that again. So you're going to try and save Mrs. Fletcher? If I can. Don't bother, Mike, we've all tried. Aiden, what are you doing here? I promised to tell you the whole story, didn't I? So what do you know? Her husband died at sea in 1941. He sure did. I was 8 years old when it happened. I remember the whole town mourned his passing. Of course, his wife took it the hardest. She stopped teaching and would spend hours every day standing on the riverbank, certain her husband would come back. And at the end of those days, she would stroll home and play sad songs on the piano. This went on for weeks until her house was bombed during the Blitz. Blimey, some people have all the luck. It's a miracle she survived. She didn't. She died that night. Aiden, are you saying she's a ghost? Yes, Bert, I am. All right, you're either late for this April Fool's or early for the next one. Regardless, I'm running you over for that sick joke. I'm not joking, Mike. It's true. Spend a bit more time on this island and you'll learn ghosts aren't exactly uncommon. Is that why nobody told us about Mrs. Fletcher? Yeah, we've all gotten used to her around here. And it's not like she causes problems. I'm guessing you've all spoken to her. Does she come across as some howling banshee? No, she comes across as a woman that needs help. And like I said, we've all tried, but she's determined to stay. We've resigned ourselves to that fact. I think you should too.
Mike talks to Gordon about Mrs. Fletcher the next day, and also tells him and explains to him why he takes it so personally. Mike has his final encounter with Mrs. Fletcher.
For not telling you, I guess it wouldn't have made much difference. It still burns me up. How could someone waste their life like that, even if it is eternal? Love makes us do foolish things. Don't I know it? Damn that woman. You're taking this rather personally, Mike. Is there a reason for that? Yes. Back on my old railway, I was friends with this local girl named Matilda. She was such a sweetheart. She was engaged to a soldier who went missing during the war. Matilda was so certain he would come back. She held on to that belief right up until we came here. By then, she was so hollowed out by sadness that I hadn't seen her smile for nearly 10 years. Mrs. Fletcher reminds me of her. Perhaps you should try sharing that story with her. Maybe if she sees a parallel to her situation, it's worth a shot. What have we got to lose? She never found anyone else? Others were interested, but she turned them away. She turned everyone away. And she hadn't smiled in 10 years? No. How long has it been since you smiled? A lot longer. Mrs. Fletcher, do you enjoy living like this? No, I don't. Then for your own sake, move on. Horace could be waiting for you right now. Why don't you go to him? Because what if he's not there? What if I miss him here? If I ever see a ship called the Silver Krill, I'll shout out to its captain, "Your good lady has moved on. Go find her." That's what you'll say? You promise? I swear. All right then, it's time for me to go. Thank you, Mike. But before I leave, one last encore.
The story ends and the credits roll. I know Victor gets a lot of criticism for his content, but I believe this one was his best written story. His best written one in about 3 seasons, because the last couple of seasons, while this one was good, season 5 was just, well, kind of lazy, it seemed like. And season 4 was like the last good season we had before we got the worst of season 5. But this season 6 really hit me in the feels with this one. But how exactly does it hold up? Well, first off, the exposure in the day sequences is a bit too bright. The night sequences are better in the equilibrium, but the one thing I will say that really speaks to me a lot is the panning shots and camera angles. They truly feel cinematic, especially when the engines are conversing. And the shots where no dialogue is said is worth about 1,000 words. The angles, the facial expressions, and the music, but that brightness effect, it's gotta go away. It should be a little bit darker, just a little bit, just so you can see the finer details of grass and bright colored objects. I'm giving it a 9 here. The narration and voice acting here, Victor once again narrates with much enthusiasm, and I don't feel myself getting lost in the speech or dialogue. His voice acting is great, except I never liked his voice for Bert.
Understandable. The best we can do is keep our eyes peeled for the vessel. Hello, Aiden. How are you?
It's like a Minecraft witch threw a potion of slowness on him. However, his voice for Rex, Mike, and Mrs. Fletcher herself feel right, so it's a 19 here. The characters are great, as well as the sound effects. The characters really feel flushed out and have a lot of depth to them. There's subtle hints with the sound effects that suggest Mrs. Fletcher is a ghost, but it doesn't outright spell it out until the final act, such as the absence of the noises of footprints. All the other human characters that are encountered have footprint sounds, but Mrs. Fletcher doesn't throughout the whole episode here. And I always love subtle hints like that like give away, where if you catch it, you get it, you know, but if you don't get it right away, you're like, oh, shocked at the end. So I'm giving it a 10 here. The music, though, especially that piano piece that plays when Mrs. Fletcher returns to her rundown old cottage that was bombed and plays those sad piano tunes really bums me out. Especially in the last act where Mike is trying to tell her to move on, and you hear this subtle string instrument like developing music on the outside, and when she finally does move on, we get this triumphant piano piece that she plays, which lifts your spirits up in the end, but with still a few tears running down your eyes. 10 here too. And the final score is a 48 out of 50 for the Stories of Sodor episode Musician. Certainly a surprise for some of my viewers, but this story got me in the feels, especially because of how relatable it is with someone grieving. Someone grieving for years that doesn't want to come to terms with a loved one's passing is a very real thing, and I know it all too well from some people that I've met over the years. When an adaptation hits you on a personal level, it's truly a good one, and this is really impactful, and yeah, I felt pretty bummed out, but I also felt triumphant and a little bit happy when it ended, so it's a bittersweet ending for me. The story, though, is very saddening. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys, excuse my tardiness on uploading a new video, but, you know, as usual, things are going on with my personal life, and I gotta take those matters first before I have any fun on YouTube. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.